Hello, students. In today's lecture, I'll talk about the greatest romantic poet, William Wordsworth. The Romantic Age was believed to start with the publication of lyrical ballads in 1798. Wordsworth and Coleridge both contributed in the publication of the lyrical ballads. Now, the Romantic Age was believed, or you could say the era, it was marked with the rapid change because it was moving from the agricultural to then industrial one. And Adam Smith's Wealth of the Nation, it dominated people's life. Industrial revolution was of course at its peak, and you could say that to talk about the unique features of romantic age, we could conclude that it was quite in contrast with the classical or Augustan age. Now, the Augustan age focused on the importance of reason and order, whereas the romantic era was dominated by feelings, intuition, and the heart. And even the romantic writers focused on the individual's freedom, on the uniqueness of the individual, so it was celebrated. As Wordsworth says that bliss was it in that dawn to be alive. Now, to talk about the brief life sketch of William Wordsworth. He was born in the small village of Cockermouth in Cumberland, and his parents were from ancient Yorkshire and Westmoreland families. He was educated at the grammar school of Hawkshade and at St. John's College at Cambridge. Unfortunately, Wordsworth's mother died when he was only 8 years in 1778, and in some of his letters, Wordsworth says that his mother was always worried about his temperament because he was sort of moody and of violent nature. So his mother was always concerned about little William. After his mother's death, he attended a grammar school at Hawkshead, and although there he lived a rough life, a strict life, but still he says that it was a happy period. Whereas his university, when he went to the St. John's College, he actually disliked the restrictions of university life, and he never read on the fixed pattern of syllabus. He always used to study according to his desire. He always read widely, and of course he read of his own choice. In 1791, now he was under pressure to enter a profession. So he visited he visited to London in 1791, but he never entered into any profession, and he just spent his life idly. Next step was to move his movement to France in order to learn the language and to fit himself for a private tutorship. Afterwards, he returned to England, and in 1793 he also published some of his works like An Evening Walk and Descriptive Sketches. In 1795, he settled with his sister at Raystown in Dorsetshire, and here he wrote a tragedy called The Borderers. In 1797, William Wordsworth and his sister moved to Alfoxden in Quantox, and there they lived with Coleridge and his wife. And Wordsworth and Coleridge, they both uh, they both spent the best part of their lives together, and the result was the publication of lyrical ballads in 1798 that ushered in a new era in English poetry. In 1802, Wordsworth married his cousin Mary Hutchinson. For a short time, he also stayed in Germany, but in 1799 he returned to his native Lake Country and he settled at Doe Cottage at Grasmere. Afterwards, no, basically, when he lived at this particular place at Doe Cottage, he says that Wordsworth says that it was the most productive part because here he wrote the greater part of the prelude. He also wrote ode on intimation of immortality. So he says that this was the most productive part of his life. Afterwards, he came under the patronage of Sir George Bowman and he published some of his poems. He was also appointed as stamp distributor. Now, of course, he suffered because of his brother John's death in 1805, even the early death of his two children, the illness of Dorothy, and his estrangement from Coleridge further added to his tragedies. In 1843, after Southey's death, he was appointed as poet laureate and he died in 1850 and was buried at Grasmere. Now, to talk about his works, Descriptive Sketches was publication. It was a collection of poems and even an evening walk. It was published in 1793. Now, the lyrical ballads, it contains 23 poems. Four poems were written by Coleridge and the rest were written by William Wordsworth. The lyrical ballad is regarded as the herald of romanticism, and Wordsworth's purpose in lyrical ballad was to make the familiar unfamiliar. Okay, he also added a preface in 1800, and but the preface was written only by Wordsworth. His poem Tintern Abbey is also subtitled Lines Composed in a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey. It was composed when Wordsworth and his sister they both were walking towards Bristol, and it's written in blank verse. Now the prelude is considered as Wordsworth's spiritual autobiography, and it's also subtitled Growth of Poet's Mind. So Wordsworth calls himself worshipper of nature in the poem, and the prelude actually is divided into 12 to 14 books, I think. The excursion is a poem that deals with the picture and with the tales of country life, but it is incomplete. The ruined cottage, the borderers, is a tragedy, and it's also incomplete. It is the only play written by Wordsworth. Some of his famous poems are Solitary Reaper, Daffodils, Ode on the Intimation of Immortality. Now, it was actually considered as the greatest ode of Wordsworth, and in this ode, he highlights the intensity of experience of the natural world, its fading, and the maturity where man can still retain their collection of former glory. Upon Westminster Bridge, it is actually a bridge in London and it's a sonnet. 3 years she grew in sun and shower. Now, actually, it was considered as the Lucy poem of Wordsworth, and the other four Lucy poems were She Dwelled Among the Untrodden Ways, Strange Fits of Passion Have I Known, A Slumber Did My Spirit Seal, etc. The Old Cumberland Beggar, The Reverie of Poor Susan, and our present poem, The World Is Too Much with Us. This was short story of William Wordsworth. I hope it's clear to you. Thank you.